everyone, and welcome to our show, Dee Talks, the Art of Specialty Lenses. I'm your host, Dee Reyes, and we're very fortunate today to have Dr. Andy Fischer with us. Andy, tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice.
Hi, well, thanks first off for having me join you on your awesome show. It's been pretty excited to listen to the episodes you've had coming out, so I feel fortunate that I'm hanging out with you. But I am in a private practice in Southern Indiana. We have two offices, one in Huntingburg, Indiana, and one in Jasper. And I am the third doctor here, and so I joined a little over 2 years ago.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I was fortunate enough to meet you when you were a resident.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where our history comes from. So now that you've broken into the specialty lens world, can you tell me a little bit about your experience getting into the specialty lens business and how you started doing that?
Yeah, so I guess kind of what planted the seed was I came home to my hometown practice here in Southern Indiana, and it was kind of the plan even before going into school was to come back here, and we wanted to figure out, with my goal being to come back home, how could we bring what I am learning in school to grow the practice even more? Because before I joined, it's primarily a medically oriented private practice, obviously a lot of glasses and contacts too, but we looked around the area and saw that very clearly nobody within about an hour or so was really specializing in contact lenses or dry eye, and so we saw those two areas to grow. And so when we were going through school, when I was going through school, that was kind of where I put a lot of my focus to learn all that I could to bring that back home, because I knew ultimately that's what I wanted to do. And it was very fortunate to have some awesome mentors too to guide me along the way. So at IU, learned under Jason Jedlicka, who we all know is a rock star in the specialty lens space. Did a lot of fits with him in his specialty clinics there at IU. Then did a residency out in Seattle with Dave Kading, who also does a ton of specialty lens things as well. And so I think the guidance that I had in that process was incredibly helpful. But then, just learning all that I could to continue to grow that at home, and it's been really enjoyable so far.
And what possessed you to come back home?
I didn't really think about anything else, honestly. Just kind of growing up around the area. My whole family's here. It's nice here. I'm not a really big city guy anyways, but pretty rural Indiana as far as that goes. And as far as coming back to the hometown practice, it's just what I grew up in. My mom was an office manager here and has been since before I can remember. She was one of the first employees in the practice actually. And so I've just been around it, grew up knowing the doctors. I have relatively poor eyesight myself without glasses and contacts. And so it's just something I've always kind of been interested in coming back to do.
That's fantastic. So what do you feel for people just starting to break into the business itself? What do you feel are the key points that practitioners need to have to start their specialty practice?
I think just to not be caught up in a lot of the bumps that come with it, because there's a lot of learning, especially if you're a new practitioner or even out of school and trying to find what you want to do in specialty lenses. There's a lot of learning that goes on, and I feel like every patient you're going to have something new that you'll learn, because they're not all the exact same. And so being willing to learn and adapt as you go, I think, is a super important thing as well. And really just to start out and get into it. Some people are pretty timid to jump into that as well. And because if they haven't, not saying that you have to do a residency, but you get so much more experience by doing these things over and over and over. And so someone who hasn't had that experience, sometimes I hear that they're timid to do it, but you never learn until you start. And so I think just being able to stand up and go into it, I think, is really important.
Getting your hands in it and just really experiencing it.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your first specialty fit that you did on your own in your private practice.
Back at home, I'm trying to think of what the first one would have been. It would have been one of our patients that's been was a long time patient in a hybrid lens, and she just never was incredibly happy with the comfort of it, had an awful time trying to take it out. And then So we put her in a scleral lens, and it was honestly, as far as the fits go, it was a pretty straightforward and easy fit. So thankfully, the first one back at home here was pretty successful, and wasn't one that was too difficult. But she was thrilled with being able to put the lenses in, have the same clarity she had in her hybrid lenses, but she enjoyed the comfort. She enjoyed the vision, the ease of putting it in, taking out. For whatever reason, she had a lot better success with a scleral lens. And so it worked out really well for that first one back here.
So how important is the education of the practitioner and the staff for the success of a specialty lens practice? And where do you go to find that type of education?
Yeah, so I think, especially as far as staffing goes, and we're really back here at home, we're finally getting into that point of being able to let the staff take over on a lot of the responsibilities. Because when I first started, I was the only one that did it. I had my schedule built to basically do a fit from beginning to end, take all, if we do anterior seg OCTs, take all imaging, do everything myself, training, insertion, removal. And the more that our practice has grown in the specialty lens arena, the more time that takes up for me seeing other patients too. So we've tried to, and we're in the process of really starting to get the staff to teach the insertion removal trainings, to do all the pre-testing. And so as far as speed and just the number of patients that we're able to help out, it opens the door wide open if the staff can take a lot of that. So just helps everything be a lot smoother, and takes a lot off of my plate, honestly, too, to make it more enjoyable for me as well. So I can see more patients and have them do a lot of the more detailed work that it takes for contact lens success.
Well, and it also gives your staff a kind of a sense of accomplishment when they're helping and doing, and you'll see
Absolutely.
them take pride in what they're doing, which I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've done staff training for the last probably 15 or 20 years. And I think it really is important to have good staff on board. So that piece of education is just really important. And so what's the most influential piece of advice that you actually received, or that you can share with new practitioners?
So as far as the fitting process of these lenses go, one of my mentors told me, don't chase perfection, because a lot of times when we fit these lenses, it's not a textbook. It belongs in a picture, in a textbook. It's not all perfect. And so what we're looking for is, one, is the lens safe for the eye? Is it going to cause any problems to finalize that lens? Is the patient happy with comfort? Is the patient happy with vision? And if there's any problems you can fix it. But if that lens is not perfectly centered or moving exactly as it should, as long as it's not sacrificing the health of the eye, and ultimately if the patient is 20 happy, I've found that is a big piece that is a secret to success, that
I agree.
I don't want to chase my tail if everything's already happy and perfect there too.
Well, and I found out too that a lot of patients, when they come in, they're not really complaining about their vision or their comfort. They just want you to know what they're experiencing, and it's not a bad thing. And I know as practitioners, we tend to take it and go, oh no, there's a problem, we've got to fix it. Mm-hmm. And when it's for the patient, it's really not a problem. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really important as well. So what other pieces in your practice do you utilize along with your specialty lenses?
Good question. And so I do all of the dry eye specialty work and myopia management for the practice too. And so those three categories, dry eye, specialty lenses, myopia management, a lot of those go hand in hand. I do a lot of scleral fits, for instance, on really bad dry eye patients. I do orthokeratology for a lot of the myopia management patients. And so there's a lot of crossover there too. So I think it's in a lot of the training that comes in with learning specialty lenses, you'll also get a lot of anterior segment disease with dry eye and ocular surface. You'll get a lot of information with myopia management and the different ways that you can utilize contacts for that.
And are you using GP lenses as well as sclerals?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Custom softs?
Not as much. I've honestly not done that too much, and just because I feel like for the few fits that I've done, the patients haven't been thrilled with the quality of their vision or the stability of their vision, as opposed to someone who I can get a good stable fit on in a corneal gas perm or a scleral gas perm. That being said, it's not unheard of, but a lot of times it's just, if we can give them optimal vision with one of the other designs and they're comfortable in it, again, it's making the patient happy with the opportunities that we can give them.
Well, and I feel like there's always, there's always options for every design out there, and there's something to fit everybody. If you keep that everything in your toolbox or in your repertoire, you can fit almost any patient that walks in the door. So
Absolutely.
So, on our program, we do tend to talk about art, and we tend to talk about the art of specialty lenses and how we utilize our other talents to benefit us whenever we're fitting contact lenses. So I understand that you actually have a bit of an artistic talent that is outside the box just a little bit. We have seen and are seeing now some of your the barbecue that you do. Now, being from Texas, my barbecue and your barbecue are a little bit different. I'm a smoker. You actually use a smoker as well. So it's interesting that that's your talent and that's really what you lean on, and the things that you learn from that. How do you think you can tie those two things together?
Well, I think it kind of, as I mentioned earlier, that not everything, every fit, or every lens fit, I should say, or every barbecue cook is the same. You can have the same type of meat that you're going to smoke, but it's going to cook different. You might try different spices or seasonings on it. And so it's one of those things, one, you can experiment around and see what works best. And two, you have a game plan going in, but if something goes wrong, you have to figure out what do you need to do to improve it or fix it, or, rectify the situation. So I feel like the learn as you go mentality kind of goes with both of those as well.
Yeah, and the creativity you have to put into it as well.
Yeah, and I am unfortunately a throw spices on and see what happens, and thankfully a lot of times it turns out. But as far as cooking goes, I wish I would write down more recipes, because sometimes I do something that turns out awesome and I can never recreate that too.
Yeah. I'm the same way. So I started doing that for my kids. I have 3 kids, and I know you have a young son.
Yeah.
Write those recipes down, and so you'll have them for them when they're older, because it's really super important.
Yeah. Great idea.
So yeah, we've seen a picture of your rub, or we've got the recipe for one of your rubs and your brisket, and we also have the recipe for your pulled pork. But you sent us images of your ribs. So I want you to tell me about the ribs.
So as far as the recipe on that, that's another one that I kind of just make up as I go. Usually it starts with kosher salt, black pepper, granulated garlic, and then depending on what I'm in the mood for, I'll put more like red pepper or spicy seasoning on it, or sometimes I'll do more brown sugar. I usually smoke it for about 3.5 hours, and sometimes we'll wrap it, sometimes we'll not wrap it in butcher paper, and then put a barbecue or glaze over the top and finish it off for another couple hours. So it's kind of experimented as you go with that, because my dad always made the best ribs, and I tried his recipe over and over and over, and I can't do it. So I kind of gave up on that and started to try to figure out what works best for me, because I can't recreate what he makes.
Yeah. Well, and I had the same problem. My mother couldn't cook, so that's why I can't. But no, Andy, it's been fabulous talking to you. Thanks so much. And I know that we've done the best we can when we're fitting these patients, these specialty lens patients, because they are special and they impact our lives, and we impact their lives as much as they impact ours. So do you have maybe a story for us where you've impacted, or you think a patient's impacted your life as much as you've impacted theirs?
Yeah, there was one patient that, and it would have been one of my first fits that I did with Dr. Jessica at IU, that it was a patient that had HSV, a big scar over her vision, and we threw a scleral lens on as a trial and over refracted her, and she started crying in the chair. And I think a lot of the specialists who do some of these lenses have that same experience, but for me, having that be one of my first experiences with the scleral lens, that got me hooked. And so I knew that was my goal always going into school, but like once you see that and that change that you can have on a patient, the change that you can make for them equally gives that that happiness to me. And that's, that's the main reason why I like what I do, is because these lenses and what we can do with specialty lenses is just, it is amazing for us as it is for the patient.
It's called the addiction moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's when you become addicted to specialty lenses.
Yeah.
And,
you keep
and anybody
that
that's
high.
fitting them has had that.
Absolutely. 100%.
All right, Andy, thank you so much for being with us today. I really enjoyed working with you. I think it's fantastic. Keep in touch. Thanks to everyone who attended today, and a special thanks goes out to ABB Optical Group for their support. If you're interested in this episode and other episodes, please go to abboptical.com under professional resources /DD Talks.